She was earning $1 million a year and feeling genuinely poor. Not financially. She understood the contradiction perfectly well. The accounts were real. The number was real. The compensation that placed her in a fraction of all earners globally was real, and she was not confused about what it represented. What felt poor was something the number could not address, something that the raise had not improved, that the promotion had not improved, that no adjustment to the compensation structure was ever going to improve, because it existed in a dimension the compensation structure was not designed to reach. She had everything the financial plan had promised. She felt nothing it had guaranteed. That gap between the external reality and the internal experience of it is the most important financial phenomenon that almost no financial content ever investigates. Because investigating it honestly leads somewhere that challenges the organizing premise of most financial ambition. It leads to the discovery that money above a certain threshold stops being the primary variable in the experience of wealth, and that the thing which replaces it is something most high earners have been systematically trading away in exchange for the income that was supposed to eventually provide it. This is that story. And it ends somewhere most financial narratives are not built to go. She had been earning at the highest levels for 9 years. The trajectory had been consistent, the accumulation had been real, the professional identity had been built on a foundation of genuine excellence that earned genuine respect from people whose respect was genuinely scarce. None of it was undeserved. All of it had cost exactly what it looked like it had cost, and more. The more was the part the financial plan had never included. By year 9, she had developed a specific and private relationship with Sunday evenings. Not dread exactly, something more precise. The awareness, arriving reliably around 7 in the evening, that the week was reassembling itself in the background of her mind before the current one had finished. That the space between the weeks, the space that was technically hers, technically unscheduled, technically free, had been colonized so thoroughly by the professional obligations waiting on the other side of it that it no longer functioned as rest. It functioned as the anteroom to Monday. Go to the comments and write Sunday if that specific feeling is familiar to you. Because what she was experiencing is documented, common at high income levels, and almost never named in the conversations that happen around high income careers. And named things can be examined. Unnamed things simply continue. Here is what the research consistently finds and consistently fails to communicate with the weight it deserves. The relationship between income and experienced well-being is not linear. In the range between financial hardship and financial security, additional income produces significant and measurable improvements in daily life quality. The relief of genuine financial stress is real, its absence is real, and the income that provides it is genuinely valuable in proportion to what it removes. But above the security threshold, once the legitimate fears are addressed and the basic optionality of a financially stable life is established, the curve flattens dramatically. Additional income produces smaller and smaller improvements in the actual daily experience of being alive. What does not flatten is the cost curve. The inputs required to sustain high income, the time, the cognitive load, the emotional availability absorbed by high-stakes professional environments, the specific form of chronic low-grade stress that is the occupational texture of roles compensated at the highest levels these continue growing in proportion to the compensation. The returns diminish, the costs do not. And at some point in that divergence, a person who is paying attention notices that the math has quietly reversed. She noticed in year 7. She did nothing with the noticing for 2 years because she had no framework for what to do with it. The financial plan said accumulate. The career plan said advance. The social environment said succeed. None of these frameworks had a column for what she was experiencing. None of them had language for the specific exhaustion of a person who is winning by every available metric and finding the winning less nourishing than the metric suggested it should be. The thing she eventually found, the thing that made the $1 million salary feel like nothing once she had it, was not a higher number. It was not a better title. It was not the achievement of any milestone the original plan had included. It was autonomy. Complete, structural, genuinely non-negotiable ownership of her own time and attention. Not work-life balance, which is an institutional concession. Not flexible working arrangements, which are a permission structure. Actual sovereignty. The condition in which the daily allocation of her most finite and irreplaceable resources, her hours, her cognitive presence, her emotional availability, was determined entirely by her own priorities rather than by anyone else's requirements. Comment autonomy if that word just described something you want that your current financial arrangement is not providing. Because the distinction between earning money and owning your time is the most important financial distinction most people never make explicitly. And making it explicitly changes everything about what you optimize for. She found it by building something of her own. Not immediately. Not cleanly. Through a transition that took 3 years of parallel construction before the foundation was stable enough to bear the full weight of the shift. She did not quit and figure it out. She built the alternative until the alternative was real, then made the move when the move was a calculated step rather than a desperate leap. What she built was a consulting practice organized around the genuine scarcity of her expertise. Not a replacement for the career, a completely different relationship with work. One in which she chose the engagements, set the conditions, defined the hours, and maintained the specific boundaries that the institutional career had made structurally impossible to hold. She earned less. The gap between the previous number and the current one is real, and she does not pretend otherwise. What the gap purchased was the thing that made the $1 million salary feel like nothing once she had experienced the alternative. Here is the insight that the financial conversation almost never delivers because it requires measuring something the financial conversation has no instruments for. The scarcest resource in a high-income life is not money. It is the cognitive and emotional bandwidth to actually inhabit the life the money was supposed to enable. And that bandwidth cannot be purchased. It can only be recovered. By reclaiming the time and attention that the income arrangement has been consuming and reallocating them according to your own priorities rather than your employer's requirements. The wealthy life, not the highest earning life, the actually wealthy life is the one in which you are present in your own experience. In which the Tuesday afternoon is genuinely yours. In which the relationship across the dinner table receives the quality of attention it deserves rather than the remainder left over after the professional obligations have taken what they require. In which the work is chosen rather than required. Pursued because it reflects genuine values rather than because the compensation structure makes refusing it feel irresponsible. She has that now. The specific, unremarkable, extraordinarily rare experience of a person who is living in her own life rather than in the life her income arrangement constructed around her. The ordinary morning that belongs entirely to her own priorities. The conversation that receives her full presence because nothing else is running in the background claiming attention she has already sold. The week that ends with something that actually functions as rest because the week ahead has not yet colonized it. These are not small things. By any honest accounting of what a human life consists of, not what a financial plan consists of, what a life consists of, these are the primary things. And the $1 million salary had been purchasing them from her daily, with her full and under-examined consent for 9 years. The trade she made is not a template. It required specific conditions, a specific level of accumulated expertise, a specific financial foundation, a specific professional context in which her skills retained their value outside the institutional structure that had employed them. Not everyone has those conditions available. But the accounting she finally ran, the full accounting, both sides of the ledger, every resource, not just the financial ones, is available to anyone willing to run it honestly. Most people never do. Not because the calculation is difficult, because the result is uncomfortable, because it reveals, in plain and unavoidable terms, the real cost of the arrangement they have been treating as simply how things are. She says the strangest part of having autonomy, after 9 years without it, is how quickly it became the only metric that mattered. Not the income, not the professional recognition, not any of the things the original ambition had been organized around pursuing. Just the Tuesday morning, the unscheduled hour, the ordinary experience of a day that belongs, without negotiation or permission, entirely to the person living it. That, she says, is what the $1 million salary felt like nothing compared to. Not because the $1 million wasn't real, because what she has now is something the $1 million was never going to provide. And she spent 9 years trading the one for the other before she finally ran the numbers honestly enough to see which side of that trade she was actually on. So here is the question this investigation leaves you with. In the life you are currently building, what are you accumulating and what are you spending to accumulate it that will not appear on any financial statement you ever review? Go to the comments and write your honest answer. The one that surfaces before the defending begins. Because that answer already knows what the full accounting says.